Are you a gig worker or self-employed? Womply has helped over 100,000 small businesses get a PPP loan. You may qualify for up to $41,000 in 100% forgivable loans. The program ends soon and funds are limited. Apply now at womply.com/apply. That's WOMPLY.com/apply.
10, 9, 8. Ignition sequence has started. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
You have entered Untold Radio AM. And now broadcasting from a secret location, your hosts, Joel Sturgis and Doug Hychek.
Hey guys, welcome to this edition of Untold Radio. I'm your host, Joel Sturgis. Right along with me is Mr. Doug Hychek. I'm right back at it. I know you guys all missed me so much, but I am back, and we are going to get things normalized so you can get your weekly dose of Untold Radio AM. So, I'm back. And Doug, how are you doing?
Doing good. How are you? It's good to see you.
Oh, it's doing great, man. Couldn't be doing any better. Loving life. Come on, the weather's beautiful. Summer's right around the corner. ATV and weather's here. Come on, it's the best ever.
Come on, I had to work all day. Come on.
Oh, so did I. I worked all day, but I love what I do.
I got to look out the window. That was it.
Okay.
That was my outdoor activity, looking out the window.
You have a window?
I got windows everywhere.
In your office? See, that's a plus. A lot of people don't even have a window.
Yeah.
They slave away in obscurity in these little basement offices and never see the light of day.
I'm looking at buds that are about to burst.
Right?
Coming.
Right.
How about you up
That's
there?
Good.
Yeah,
it's pretty chilly. We had a high of, 61 degrees. We had snow just the other day, so...
Yeah, we did too.
It is not being all that great, but hopefully things get normalized. That'll be great. We got a great show, though. Huge show on tonight. We got, I don't know if he wants to go by Beans exclusively, but Larry Beans Baxter is on tonight. And he's an author, and he wrote Abandoned. It's about a town in Alaska, right?
Yep.
That was abandoned because of alleged Bigfoot activity. So he's going to be coming on here, bottom of the hour. And we're going to talk all about this book and this case of this abandoned Alaskan town. And I was thinking when I was getting ready, people from Alaska are tough. They're not your normal run-of-the-mill people. They're tough frontier type people. How bad would this have to be for the town? Everyone in the town to abandon. It had to have been something horrible. Because every Alaskan I know, that I've known throughout the years, is double tough. I've never met a wimpy Alaskan. I don't know about you, Doug, but every Alaskan I ever met is really made of some tough stuff.
Yeah, but if you're having rocks thrown at you every day and maybe people go missing,
yeah,
that's gonna maybe do it. You're gonna move on.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it'd be enough for a lot of us to want to move on for that. But anyhow, he'll be talking about that bottom of the hour, so that'll be a lot of fun. Doug, other than that, what's new? What can you talk about? What's new projects? 'Cause I know you've been busy, man.
Today is my deadline. I had to turn in a script, which I still haven't turned in, but I have until midnight. So it's for a multi-hour TV special. I'm not going to say where it's going to run, nothing.
No,
but so that was kind of a big push. You know how it is. You always kind of wait to the last minutes, the last days, and it was kind of like, well, I'll do it tomorrow.
I do my best to work when I'm up against a deadline.
Yeah.
I do. I wait to that last minute, and I do my best work.
Well, I didn't wait to the last minute. I've been working on this for years. but I had to package it, and it had to be packaged in a way where somebody on the East Coast can get it, can get excited about it.
Oh, can understand it.
No, I'm sure they can understand it, but
yeah,
you know what I mean.
I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
So you're trying to woo the East Coast Syndicate over there.
Yeah. Did you go get a car wash today when you walked up? You said you wanted a wash and a walks.
A wash and a walks? No, I'm sorry. It's been a long day. So we got to talk a little bit. There's the Russian government's up to some hijinks.
Yeah.
We got to talk about that. Americans are learning more by the week about secret Pentagon investigations of the UFO mystery. But what about the world powers such as Russia? Back in the 1990s, Mystery Wire, that's right, Mystery Wire reported with George Knapp back in those days, made 2 fact-finding trips to the USSR. As in the United States, the Russian military spent decades downplaying and dismissing the UFO mystery. Private citizens were discouraged from openly discussing flying saucers, but behind the scenes, the Russian military and defense contractors conducted what might be the largest government study of UFOs in the world. Huh. You had to know that they're interested too. It couldn't be just us.
Of course.
So, they're definitely interested. And an order was given by the military of defense, Ministry of Defense, that the UFO incidents must be kept. The lid must be kept on these at all costs in the USSR. They didn't want their people to overreact to these UFO instances. So they were fully investigating them while they were downplaying at the same time, to the point where releasing photographs, if you were a private citizen, of UFOs in Russia could get you arrested, Doug. If you were to release any of that information as a private citizen. And that, of course, was to curb any kind of hysteria that might happen. So if you saw a UFO, you took a picture, and you decided you were to share that picture, in Russia, you were committing a crime.
And when did that end?
That ended in 1996, finally. They gave up on that being that hard line on it, where people were, there's just so many sightings that they couldn't stop everybody from wanting to share this. At the time, Colonel Boris Sokolov was in charge of the Ministry of Defense study for 10 years. He did this. He said there were 40 incidences in Russia with Russian warplanes chasing UFOs, resulting in 3 of those planes crashing and 2 of the pilots being killed. But get this, Doug, another one of them was abducted from the jet. So it was an empty jet that crashed, and they have no idea what has happened to this pilot since.
And he didn't eject.
He did not object. Nope. When they found the plane, the wreckage.
Yep.
The seat was intact.
Wow.
And so he never ejected. So they're expecting to find a body in this MiG fighter.
Yeah, they think that happened maybe over or near Duluth too, back in the 60s,
really?
70s too. Yeah.
Yeah, just right out of the airplane, which is amazing and scary all at the same time. Meaning that these UFOs not only were out maneuvering these MiG fighters, and anyone that knows anything about fighter planes, the MiG forever was the upper crust of fighter planes. I mean, they could do aerial things that we couldn't even touch with what we had. And so for UFOs to make them look, like nothing, that's saying something. But then Knapp, years later, he went and did this investigation in Russia. After this, Knapp also met with the longtime commander of Russia Air Force Systems, who confirmed he was ordered by the Russian Air Force to stand down and refrain from firing or otherwise engaging with any UFOs over Russian airspace in fears of retaliation. That's amazing,
Yeah.
Doug.
It's not good to shoot at a UFO.
No, and it goes on to talk about now the this is the reason why the story is coming out now. The Russians are going to be releasing everything that they know to the world about UFOs.
That's good, but do you believe that? I don't. Obviously, you can't.
I think that there's going to be a lot of Kremlin redaction.
No, there'll be.
I don't.
Obviously, there's a need to get a little bit of disclosure out there, but I just don't think it's going to be too much. But I think it'll be enough to where people will start talking about it more. Pilots will start talking about all their encounters. Do you have any idea how many pilots I talk to that tell me privately, their UFO encounter? Every private pilot or commercial pilot I meet, first question out of my mouth, tell me what you've seen. I promise I will not, I won't say a word. And they'll usually have 2, 3, 4, 5 crazy stories.
Do they tell anyone, up the chain of command about what they've seen, or is that very taboo, hush-hush thing?
Completely taboo, yep. Even today, it's completely taboo.
Really? Yep. See, you would think that they would be more embracing it because, we had the Tic Tac incident, right? Caught on film. Yep. Things like that. You would think that they'd be a little more open to hearing about these incidences, but I would imagine they're worried about being labeled a crackpot.
Have you seen these commercial jets with these huge dish type dents in them that look like they hit a very round object?
Yes.
I mean, have you ever seen that up close? If you go up to a jet, a 747, and you look at that nose cone, it's massive. And to see these 6 foot, 7, 8, 9, 10 foot dents that are perfectly round, they're rounded and dished in, and then they always say, well, it was a bird strike. But
that's what I've always heard.
Yeah, there's no blood. Yeah, there's no blood there. Come on, a goose isn't going to dent. Put it this way. If a goose can dent a 747 nose cone that quick and that deep and that big, I do not want to fly in an airplane anymore.
Well, yeah, that means it's pretty flimsy construction.
Oh my gosh!
If a bird can do that,
yeah, it's just not possible.
But what do we? How do you feel about the Russians possibly having disclosure before us?
It's exciting. I think it's exciting. Maybe there's something they know that's going to happen in the future or near future, and they have to kind of prepare us for it. For all they've been told, hey, we're going to put on a display, and, we're going to send down 10,000 craft. We're going to fill your skies on this state. And so you better come clean a little bit.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Yeah, we've heard that from other people, too, that have talked about the alien invasion happening and things like that. But it seems like the Russians would be an unlikely place, though, getting back to that, just because of their track record of other things. Yeah. Because look at years ago, was it Dyatlov Pass? I always have a hard time pronouncing that. Where those hikers went up.
It's called they got me screwed up. Dyatlov.
There it is. And I remember I was poring over what had happened to them. I was very interested for a lot of years, still am, in what happened to those hikers.
Yeah,
and especially that last photo they took.
It's a mystery.
Of what seems to be. But they were, after that happened, holy crap, the hush-hush machine began there too. They were not interested in sharing anything.
Yeah, those people, just to kind of tell the audience what happened, there were a bunch of, I think they were cross-country skiers.
Yeah, they're going on that hike.
Right, and near the Ural Mountains in Russia, and they were all experienced outdoors people. Anyhow, as the story goes, the tent was found cut, as if it was like they needed to get out of the tent super quick. They found the bodies in just kind of all different states of disassembly. Some were just frozen to death. Some were crunched and ripped, and I believe somebody was decapitated. Ribs were, broken. I mean, there was a lot of really strange injuries. Some of their hair had turned color to bright
Yeah.
orange.
And radiation was found on these
Yeah,
people too, which
radiation.
is super strange.
A lot of weird stuff. And so, um, you know, you read something like that, and obviously something out of the normal happened. It probably was not a bear attack.
No, it would not have been a bear attack. Do you ever think about doing a program on that, Doug?
I've thought about it because everything I've seen on it is really weak. It's just kind of.
You take pride in your work, and so do we. We're Northern Tool, and we have every tool you can imagine, and some you've only dreamt about. Plus, our service and product knowledge is legendary. Find your pride and joy at Northern Tool. Visit our store or buy online and pick it up curbside. Northern Tool and Equipment. Quality tools for serious work.
Me, but also you. The Pharaoh fast forwards his favorite foreign film, Powder Donut. Okay, what's my line?
The only line I see here on the script is get options based on your budget with the name your price tool from Progressive.
Oh man, that's a tongue twister, huh? I'm sorry, I'm gonna need a few more minutes. Bulbous Walrus, the Bulbous Walrus.
The name your price tool, only from Progressive.
The owl ran afoul of the comatose coxswain.
Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
Just boring and weak, and you don't seem to dig very deep. We actually got access to the KGB archives when we were in Russia, and it can be done. It can be done if you have the right contacts, and if you're, only after very specific things, and you pay the right people.
I was going to say, I mean, I would imagine there's a cost that comes with getting that information.
Look, when you go to Russia to film, there's a cost to get in. There's a cost to get your tapes out and your equipment out. And it's always this game, and we just thought I could tell you stories all day about just trying to get tape out of there because they know they got you,
Yeah, because you're in Russia.
You're going to pay.
Yeah. So, and if you don't pay, you don't play, you may not be leaving Russia.
Yeah, you don't really know. You never know what you're dealing with.
Yeah.
But, a lot of, obviously I've been there, and it's no desire to go back at this point.
Do you believe, Doug, that 5G, the new internet, is this is something that I was just told the other day, and I read an article on it, that the 5G, do you believe that's alien technology?
No.
Do you no?
No.
Because I was reading an article going 5 reasons why 5G is alien technology.
Okay, go ahead.
And it had mentioned, number one, the quantum leap in technology that we've seen in even the last 2 decades is beyond, if you look at computers.
Well, let's back the truck up. You didn't ask me whether I thought we're using some alien technology, which
no, but I'm saying
we are. There's no doubt. Yes, I mean right down to going from a big glass tube to a transistor. I mean that's quite a quantum leap. And I'm not saying people in America are dumb, but still normally there's a little more progression with some. You just don't go from glass radio tubes all of a sudden. Oh, gee, we have fiber optic technology.
Yeah.
It's kind of...
That's true. But that was one of the things that in the article was the quantum leap of technology we've had. And then 4G and 3G and now 5G it kind of came out of nowhere. But I think it was under... The rational side of me says this has probably been under development for many, many, many years.
Well, what are the 5 reasons quickly?
Computer technology, infrastructure technology, and then metals that we did not have that were being used in microchips.
Okay.
And also goes into, again, like the fiber optic technology that we did not have the ability to create and that just showed up out of nowhere.
Yeah.
So give many reasons building up to why 5G is probably alien technology, and those are the 5 reasons.
I don't like 5G because they're basically going to be using us, our homes, our trees, to put these little mini cell towers everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's got a much shorter wavelength, much shorter distance
Yeah.
travel, and which is from the shorter wavelength, as I know. And so we're going to all be bombarded a little bit more with, EMF.
Yeah. But is that good
No.
for our bodies?
No, it's not, because it's basically stick your head in a microwave and figure out a way to turn it on. Would that be good for your brain? No.
No.
It heats up your organs, and there's things that can happen.
Yeah, exactly. Well, moving on, where we got the next one is kind of an interesting one. What does Bigfoot have to do with a murder at a pot farm?
Yeah, the Sasquatch show.
Yeah. Hulu is releasing, of course, the show that's coming on.
I watched it.
And what's your thoughts?
Oh my God, I'm the wrong one to ask. When they bought, to me, it started out really good.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, it should have been a 1-hour show.
Instead of, I haven't seen it yet because I don't have Hulu.
Yes. I mean, they wasted, there was a lot of time wasted to tie, it's just such a stretch to tie this story together with a Bigfoot killing people. And I just saw the direction it was going. And I'm not really one to say it was good or bad because I'm so biased.
Yeah. Would it, do you ever see some of these shows like this one? Maybe not this. I mean, this is each their own taste. I mean, some people will love it, others will hate it. But do you ever, as a filmmaker, do you ever say to yourself, how the hell did that get passed? How the hell did that get greenlit?
Yeah.
A show this bad.
Yep.
But somehow there it is.
Well, I wouldn't say not. No, I don't think that's really gone through my head. I think when I look at the amateur ones that are up on like Amazon, the ones that they're hour-long shows, and there's tons of them that people place there, and I think, what were you thinking?
Yeah. What does this show serve? Yeah, I mean, why is this here?
So bad technically.
Yeah.
Story, there's no, it's just, yeah. But I'm not going to ask. But no, I think everybody should check it out.
Mm-hmm.
If you're really into and you're not familiar with the underworld of the cannabis industry, growing these grows out in the forest, you may find it really interesting.
Years ago, I actually did a big, long series of radio programs about the underground of the cannabis industry.
Yeah.
And it was me and another, it was a filmmaker. And we were doing Death Mountain. I think it was called Death Mountain. And
Murder Mountain.
Murder Mountain, there it is.
Yeah.
And at that time, we were coinciding a radio show with it. Oh my God, how deadly, number one, that area is, and how secretive the people are.
Yep.
I mean, taking a deep dive into it for doing a radio show, I couldn't imagine being the ones going there to film like they did. Dealing directly with it.
Yeah, take a good hard look at the show. Yeah, I didn't see anything that I just personally wasn't impressed.
Yeah. But how Bigfoot, yeah, I mean, I'm going to have to take a look at this when I can, this show that's out there. And I like it because in the article it says, spoiler alert, Bigfoot didn't do it.
Yeah, it starts out really good. I mean, the animation, the beauty shots were amazing, so it starts out really, really strong. Sometimes that's an indication that down the line you're going to be in deep trouble.
Yeah, kind of. A lot of those shows, they fall in their face. When they're really good in the beginning, and then it just falls on their face.
See, when I even rewatch a Monster Quest, I see the consistency that it stays good. It stays exciting. It actually gets more exciting. It doesn't You
Not
don't
to
blow
toot
your
your own
wad in the
horn.
beginning, and then suddenly it's like, oh, now we're at crappy footage.
You're not biased at all, are you, Doug?
No, I'm not biased. Of course I you have to be.
Yes, I agree. Monster Quest episodes are very good, and I've watched pretty much all of them.
Yep.
And if you've never seen a Monster Quest, you're listening to this show, you should go check it out. You can get it. I think it's available. Most of them are available on streaming right now.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you can get that on Amazon, stuff like that. So check that out if you've never checked out Monster Quest. I highly recommend it.
History
And
lunch too. History put up
what's
on
it?
YouTube.
Yes, yeah, they did. Yes, they did. Yes, they did. But there's a lot going on in the world of UFOs. That was an interesting couple stories there that we were covering, but I still can't get around the idea of just kind of looping back here about Russia being the ones that disclose or blow the lid off the UFOs. I see a lot of misinformation coming, more than information with the disclosure from Russia. I just can't seem to shake that out of my head.
Well, in some
That's all.
ways, they have more. It seems like they have more freedom in Russia now than we do.
Well, yeah, you're not wrong.
Yeah.
You are
I don't want
not
to get all
wrong.
political here, but
No, I understand what you're
I'm
saying, though.
seeing stuff that's just shocking.
It seems like the roles have been reversed to some extent,
Mm-hmm.
and that's a scary thing, you know.
But enough about politics. By the way, I was reading a story last night that was about a three-way coincidence that even I knew one of the players in this three-way, very weird story. So this lady is on a flight. The plane gets hit. It's got 93 passengers. The plane gets hit by lightning. Obviously, the lightning rips a hole in the side of the plane. She gets sucked out.
Oh, damn.
She's in her seat, strapped in. Falls over 2 miles and lives.
Oh, my... What?
She lived. Not only lives, she ends up having to walk 10 miles to get help.
So she falls out of the plane. She gets sucked out. And she's in her seat.
Yes.
She lands. And you know this individual.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she lands with no injuries, it would sound, or very minimal injuries.
Yeah.
2 miles falling and walks 10 miles.
Yes, to get help. Now that's a bad.
Oh my God.
That's a bad day, right, Joel?
That's a horrible day.
Okay.
That's a real bad day.
But it might have been a good day because she was the only one that lived on the plane.
Ooh.
All 92 perished.
Cup half full kind of moment there.
So think about that.
Right?
So she was the lucky one. But it gets even weirder. So a filmmaker that I have met, was going to be on that plane.
No way.
But he couldn't get his entire crew on the plane. So they passed on that flight.
Wow.
But then again, he's a filmmaker, so he hears about the woman. I'm not going to mention any names.
Yeah.
But here's about the woman. Ends up doing a documentary on her. So that's a three-way coincidence.
That is really strange.
Yeah. You talk about entering into the Twilight Zone there.
Has that documentary been released?
Sure, of course.
Okay. Can you tell us the name of the documentary?
No, I don't.
You don't want to tell us the name?
No, I'm just gonna, people can look it up.
Okay. All right. Good enough. Well, just that is a bad day.
Yeah.
That would be a good and bad day. And then, of course, I wonder if she went through survivor's guilt. Everyone else is dead.
Yeah.
You know, that's real common, I hear. That, why me? Why am I the one spared?
But it reminded me of a trip that I was booked on. I was going up to a place called Franz Josef Land up in the Arctic, in Russia, right? And I was going with some notable people, including Al Gore's wife at this time.
Oh, wow.
And it was...
you and Tipper. Gore.
Yes. It was a trip to highlight some of the beauty in this Arctic region, which was really untouched. But I can't remember exactly what happened, but the person who had arranged the trip called me up one day and said, hey, can we switch places with this company? This other company that wants to go. And I'm like, I looked at my calendar. I'm like, yeah, sure, it's fine. Because it actually gave me more time to prepare because I was going to be the cameraman.
Gotcha.
So I didn't mind. I never mind more time to pack, more time to prepare.
Yeah.
And anyhow, that group all died.
Oh.
They hit
man.
The Aeroflot helicopter hit a glacier and they died.
Oh, that could have been you. Look at that. Look at that. Fate had other ideas for you.
Yes.
Wow. Damn. That reminds me to hear people talking about like 9/11, not taking that flight. A couple people.
Exactly.
Just a gut feeling, not get on that plane, stuff like that. So glad you're still here, Doug, and glad you didn't take that airplane.
This whole trip was and started out in a way of giving a glaciologist friend from Russia who was doing amazing work drilling these big ice plugs.
Yeah.
Study the history of the world.
Yeah.
And it was to give him some of his first national publicity. So it started out as a favor, and hey, I'm always game for an adventure.
Hurry in-store or online and celebrate Lowe's Springfest before it's over. With values on a Cobalt 40-volt string trimmer, was $159, now $119. Or we've got a Cobalt 40-volt mower, was $299, now $249. Give your yard the works this spring. Springfest, a festival of fun and savings for your garden and total home. Lowe's, home to any budget, home to any possibility. Offers valid through 4/28 while supplies last. Selection varies by location, U.S. only.
Are you a gig worker or self-employed? Womply has helped over 100,000 small businesses get a PPP stimulus loan and proudly serves more than 600,000 small businesses across America. Millions of self-employed workers may qualify for up to $41,000 in 100% forgivable loans. So apply today. The program ends soon, and funds are limited. Apply now at womply.com/apply and see if you qualify for a PPP loan. Womply.com/apply. That's WOMPLY.com/apply.
Right. Speaking of adventure, we gotta get out of here. We gotta talk to Larry Beans, man. We gotta talk about the Bigfoot situation up there. His book, Abandoned. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Right after this.
Hi, Tom Bodette. If you can hear me, then you have an internet connection, which means you can do cool things online, like listen to streaming radio, obviously, or watch a video of a monkey washing a cat. Let your freak flag fly. Or you can book a room at a great price at motel6.com. Isn't the internet wonderful? Everything you want right at your fingertips, and whoa, did not need to see that. I'm Tom Bodette for Motel 6, and we'll leave the light on for you.
Unexpected reactions to smart financial decisions brought to you by feedthepig.org.
Well, I finally did it. My student loan is totally paid off.
I can't believe it.
I can't believe it either. I paid more than the minimum each month, and soon enough, it was gone.
So you're just giving up?
Giving up on what?
The life of luxury. Egyptian cotton, caviar Thursdays, designer everything.
What are you talking about?
Our plan. What happened to winning the lottery and mastering the art of the perfect mimosa? Hosting galas, wearing enough jewelry to require a bodyguard, vacationing in the French Riviera, and then buying it.
I just thought maybe it was time to prepare for my future. You know, set some financial goals, make some smart investments, open a 401k.
Financial goals? Investments? A 401k? You are horrifying right now. Listen, if winning the lottery were easy, everyone would do it.
When it comes to financial stability, don't get left behind. Get tools and tips for saving at feedthepig.org. This message brought to you by the American Institute of CPAs and the Ad Council.
Northern Tool and Equipment.
So me and the boys head out to tailgate today and find some other fans in our spot.
Well, it happens.
Cheering for the wrong team.
Oh, this is war.
Even worse, they've got this couch set up and everything.
A couch?
Yeah, it's sectional.
All right, first thing, don't ever use the word sectional again.
Done.
Second, I want you to grab a 4,700-pound tow chain with J-hook and grab hammer. Throw that on the back of your truck.
Got it.
Now you're going to Hail Mary the J-hook over the end of that couch. Time to find a better spot for your new friends.
That should do it.
There's no problem a little horsepower can't solve. Northern Tool and Equipment.
Taking a family of 5 to the amusement park can cost a small fortune.
Oh, yeah. So to save some money, we thought, hey, let's bring the amusement park to us.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
All right, step right up, young man. Are you ready to ride the wacky waterfall?
That's just the bathtub with the shower head running.
Nope, it's the wacky waterfall.
It's the shower, Dad.
Waterfall.
Wacky.
There's an easier way to save. To get a free rate quote, go to geico.com. Then buy online, over the phone, or at your local Geico office.
Green light. Hey girl, school zone. I'm getting hungry. Car changing lanes. You want to meet me for pizza? Stop sign. Intersection clear. Yeah, street. Pizza sounds good. Ballin Street? Girlin Street!
It's hard to concentrate on two things at once, like texting and driving. Stop the text, stop the wrecks. How will you stop texting and driving? Tell us at stoptextstoprex.org. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
And welcome back to Untold Radio AM. I'm your host, Joel Sturgis. Right along with me is Mr. Doug Hychak. We're coming right back at you. Got a great show lined up. The rest of the show's going to be really, really cool. Got Larry Beans Baxter on. He's an author. He wrote the book Abandoned, about a town abandoned due to Bigfoot activity. A little bit about Larry before we jump right into it. Larry Beans is an author of Abandoned, chronicles a small town in Alaska abandoned due to possible terrorizing Bigfoot activity. Baxter was born in Kentucky. He spent his youth hunting and fishing in remote areas of the, I'm trying not to destroy this one, in Muhlenberg County. His interest in the unexplained and cryptozoology started at a young age after reading many books on the subject and watching such classics as Legend of Boggy Creek and In Search Of. He enlisted in the Army in his early 20s and found himself stationed in Richmond, Alaska. For over the next 4 years, he developed a passion for exploring Alaska's vast wilderness. When his military service came to an end, Bean started a career in law enforcement, first serving with the St. Paul Police Department on the remote island of St. Paul in the Bering Sea. Wow, that takes some cojones to be up there in the Bering Sea. After 3 years, he transferred to Homer Police Department. So with no further ado, I'd like to welcome Larry Beans Baxter to the show. How you doing, Larry?
Oh, living the dream. Living the dream.
Oh, man, it sounds like it. It sounds like it. So now, like we'd said, you're former now law enforcement. You've retired since January. You've been loving the retirement life, it would seem.
I have, and I mean, I'm busy. I can't really even tell you what I do all day. But at the end of the day, I'm like, man, I was busy.
I met so many people that have retired, and they tell me I work more now than I ever did when I had a job.
I believe it.
Doing various things. So, that's something that maybe one day, God willing, I can retire. But who knows? Who knows? Who knows? Who knows? And Doug here, we were talking a little bit about this. So I was mentioning to Doug, everyone that I have ever met from Alaska are tough as nails, frontier kind of people. You got to have a certain grit to be an Alaskan. It's not a given. It can be a hard life up there. So for a whole town to abandon, I'm not saying something. I mean, we're talking about Alaskans here, not Californians.
Yeah.
No offense to Californians, but Alaskans are a different lot altogether. So when you heard this story, it must have made the hairs stand up on you and make your wheels turn because you wrote the book. What was your thoughts when you first heard this?
Well, when I first heard the story, I was intrigued because I've always had the lifelong interest in Bigfoot, and there's little stories here and there about aggressive Bigfoot and Bigfoot encounters and stuff like that. But the story with Port Chatham, it really intrigued me because there was the possibility for some really good documentation of these Bigfoot encounters. I mean, if the whole town was abandoned because of them, then you would think, okay, well, there's got to be some good documentation here. So I really, and plus it doesn't hurt that I don't live very far away from there. From where I'm sitting right now talking to you, Port Chatham's only about 40 miles away from me as the crow flies. It's even that being said, though, it's extremely difficult to get to. You can really only get there by boat, and you can only get there by a certain size boat because it's around the corner, and it's outside Ketchimack Bay. You have to go into the bad water, as they say, to get there, and so it can be a very difficult journey and very expensive to get there because you have to rent a boat of a certain size or own a boat of a certain size to get there. So just getting there offers all kinds of challenges. And when I heard the story, I felt like I had to dive more into it and just get more information on it because I was just so intrigued by it and the possibility that there could be some good documentation and some good evidence of the story of what happened there.
It's amazing. Man, oh man, oh man, a whole ton of bad. Right, Doug? Isn't that crazy?
So, when did you first hear the story, Larry?
Well, I first heard about it before I ever moved here to Homer, to which is very close to Port Chatham. But I think the first time I ever got wind of it was probably from the internet, and just then when I moved here, I actually heard tales from people that knew people that had lived there and had family that was from there. I've actually talked to quite a few people that were born there and actually lived there when the town was active. And just those encounters with those people and just hearing, the real life connections to the town really just drove me, to find out more and to learn more about it.
Yeah, it was one of the things is, constantly I hear about Bigfoot activity on the Kenai area.
Right.
And Alaska itself. That's a vast wilderness, but boy, I'll tell you, when you get an Alaskan that has some type of an encounter in Alaska, I take those to the bank far more. Because most people up there are very familiar with wildlife. Lots of people are trackers. They're big game hunters. And so when you have a tracker from Alaska that finds footprints and they go, it couldn't be anything else, you take it to the bank. But tell me about other, before we get deep into your story, tell us about other things that you've heard, just being up there and other encounters of Bigfoot that you must have heard. You must have people coming to you.
Right. And one of the things about Alaska is almost everybody has either a Bigfoot story or knows somebody that has a Bigfoot story. And sometimes it can be like pulling teeth getting those out of people because they're pretty tight-lipped about it. But other times it seems like I get so many I don't know what to do with. Now that the book's out and it's starting to get out there and be circulated around, I'm getting people contacting me that want to talk, like, oh, my grandmother lived in Port Chatham and she told me these stories, or, my uncle was hunting here and he had this happen to him, and they're just coming in at almost a rate so fast I can't keep up with them.
Yeah.
Some of my favorite Kenai Peninsula Bigfoot stories, almost all of them come out of the Kenai National Wildlife Refuge, which is about 60 miles north of me. That's probably where I spend most of my time out in the field. And one of my favorite stories out of there comes from a few years ago during the Funny River Road Fire, which was a big fire that swept through that area. And a firefighter actually saw one of these things walking away from an area where he was working. And he just, to come from a firefighter who's, familiar with working wildland firefighters, being out in the woods, they see, animals. I love that story just because it's just, what else could it have been? What else walks up on two legs and walks away from you like that? And there's been other encounters in that area. Hunters have seen them. I've had a few, not visual encounters, but I've had some strange audio. I was laying in my tent one night, and me and my wife both heard something screaming out in the woods, not too far from our tent. And of course, I know my way around the woods. I haven't by any means seen every animal out there or know every animal out there, but I know my way around the forest. And my wife was born and raised here, and we just kind of looked at each other, and we were just like, "What in the heck was that?" Just
What
this
was that
loud.
scream like? What was the scream like, Larry?
It was just it was a roar, like, "Ah!" And it did it 2 or 3 times, and we just kind of looked at each other, and we're like, "What in the hell was that?" We couldn't identify. It wasn't a bear. It wasn't, and I can't think of anything else that would have made that sound.
No, I mean, that's the thing about those sounds. There's nothing in the forest that roars. Yeah, there's lynx and there's, but when you hear a lynx, doing their woman being murdered type sounds and talking, it's still, it's a lynx.
Right. And I've been close enough to lynx to touch them, I've been, and that's the thing about it is I run into so many skeptics, even up here, with the vast amount of land and territory. And that's one of the challenges with being a Bigfooter in Alaska, is that it's so vast and so large that if they don't want to be around people, they certainly don't have to be. Mm-hmm. And to get to some of the areas where I believe they reside, it can be expensive and quite intense. I just got back Tuesday from a property, Doug. I believe I know what I'm talking about.
Yep.
Here on the peninsula, I just got back Tuesday from that, and I have no doubt in my mind they're there. It was a rather uneventful trip, but I think that in itself was important information. The fact that we were there and there wasn't a lot going on, and usually this time of year there is, that we had to sit around and figure out, well, why not? And we had a very heavy snowfall this winter, whereas the last few years we have not.
So you're behind.
So yeah, exactly. The lack of activity led us to question, like, well, why not? What's going on? What's different? We had a large snowfall. The last few years we haven't had much snowfall at all. So it makes us think, okay, well, they're not here yet because obviously they either winter somewhere else or they've chased a resource, somewhere else, possibly because of the heavy snowfall. So, even when nothing happens, you can still learn from that. And I can't wait to get back there. I have no doubt in my mind. I've heard audio from that area. I've talked to some of the people that have been there and had encounters, and I don't doubt the activity at all. I know there's stuff going on there. But I just missed it this trip.
Yeah. Can you describe the flora and fauna of the Kenai Peninsula and just how rich it is? I mean, it's insanely rich.
Right. Well, the Kenai has a little bit of everything. It's only like 150 miles long, which isn't much, especially by Alaska standards. But there's a lot packed in there. You've got mountains. You've got like rainforests, you've got tundra, you've even got beaches. There's there's something for everybody on the Kenai Peninsula. And some of the property I was at just this last weekend, it's just everything is just it's a rainforest. It's just everything is covered in this soft moss. Even the trees, the tree stumps. It's just covered in this soft lichen moss, and there's just so many areas where if you just walk into the woods a few feet and lay down, you're invisible. Nobody's going to see you.
Yeah.
And there's just areas like that all over the state, and it's just a veritable smorgasbord of different kinds of environments. There's tundra, there's mountains. There's beaches, even, deserts where you have these not sandy deserts, but like the tundra, it's a desert in its own right.
Yeah.
And it's just an amazing environment. And to think that we know everything about it and then know everything that lives in it, I think is pretty arrogant.
Yeah. What about some of the wildlife on the Kenai?
We've got a little bit of everything. We've got moose, we've got black bear, brown bear, sheep, and actually the property that I was on this weekend, Doug, I found evidence of deer, and there's not supposed to be deer there, but I found tracks, I found scat, and the property owner has got video of them, but according to Fish and Game, they're not there.
What type of deer is that? Black-tailed deer?
Yeah, the Sitka black-tailed deer. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So I mean, it's just again arrogance. There's no deer there. That's not. They don't live there, but they are true. I mean, I found evidence of them, and it just goes to show.
That's actually interesting.
Yeah, and it just goes to show us we don't know everything.
Mm-hmm.
We probably never.
Well, there's a Bigfoot. Yeah, I mean, which chased the whole town away. Alaska's the place to hide. I mean, there has to be just a huge abundance of Bigfoot in that area because, like you said, the vast wilderness and the terrain it's really not designed for us to be running around, human beings. It's a very hard terrain to navigate. So, kind of begs the question of, if there's Bigfoot, do you think they're just do you think they're hiding kind of not so much everywhere, but most places? I mean, because it's untouched. And if that's the case, I wonder what prompted a Bigfoot to talk about the book a little bit to attack a whole town. I mean, how big was this town that was abandoned?
Well, the population depended on the season. There were people that lived there year round. I think in the wintertime, the population was relatively low, probably 100 or less. But in the summertime, during the fishing season, it would balloon up when they would bring the workers in to work in the cannery. There was also a large sawmill and a lot of other industry in the area, logging, other such things. And the population would obviously balloon up in the summertime when the workers would come in to work in the industries. And I don't have an exact number. Mm-hmm. And the challenge with investigating Port Chatham is that a lot of these events occurred before statehood, before Alaska was a state, before things like mandatory record keeping, stuff like that. So it's difficult to come by official records. But I can say on a pretty good authority that the population of the town was anywhere between 100 and 500 people, depending on the time of year.
And how long ago was this that they abandoned the town?
Well, the last resident to leave the town was in 1950. The town, I don't know when it was officially founded, but early 1900s, I know it was in operation. And that's when we hear some of the first rumblings that there was something going on there. It was in the early 1900s. There's an article in, I believe it's Alaska Sportsman's Magazine from the early 1900s, in which they state that the workers in the cannery were threatening to walk out because something in the woods was bothering them. Mm-hmm. And they basically went on strike and said, "Hey, we're not gonna work unless you guys do something about this." And the owner of the cannery caved in, and they actually hired armed security like Pinkertons. It wasn't Pinkertons, but like Pinkertons, to come in and stand armed guard around the perimeter of the town for the rest of the season, while the workers would leave their families and go to the cannery to work.
Jeez. So it was that bad where people were willing to give up their livelihoods to get away from whatever it was.
And you have to look at it like this too, guys. Ghost towns are, it's nothing new in America. There's ghost towns everywhere, but they always follow a certain narrative where there's a resource that's discovered or found, and the town is built up around it. Like a coal mining town or a gold mining town. and the town grows and people come in and they do things like open stores or open goods and services, doctor offices, dentists, to service the workers that are profiting from the resources. And then, eventually the resource, the mine plays out, or for whatever reason, the resource falls out of favor, nobody wants it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And then the town, will slowly die out and people move away, they move on to other things. And Port Chatham doesn't necessarily fit that narrative, because you have the cannery there, you have, the fishing industry there, the logging industry, and you have all these resources in the area. They never went anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Resources are
I
still
was
there.
gonna say, like, the fish didn't dry up, so to speak, where they weren't running the salmon, and the wilderness is plentiful, so the timber industry would have been thriving. So it makes no sense to give it up, and even today, I'm sure it's the same thing. There's a thriving market if someone wanted to open it there, but it's either one of two things: either it was so hard to get product out of there because of the terrain that it became, unfeasible to do so, or something natural chased them out. So it's one of those two things usually. And then, like, for where I live in an area where iron ore mining is big. And we have, gosh, I can think of on the top of my head, at least 30 or 40 different abandoned ghost towns around me. So you're right. The resources dry up, the town will move right along with it to the next site where the resource is plentiful. But this, like you said, does not follow that pattern. So the rumblings started at Bigfoot, but what was the first? Did you in your studies, research, what was the first activities that they were seeing that was bothering them? Was there anything specific?
Well, like I said, records are really hard to come by. So we pretty much have to rely on things like eyewitnesses and people that grew up there. Some of the, we have the article from the early 1900s that talks about the workers refusing to work.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then we jump ahead to the 1920s, where we have some sightings of a Bigfoot-like creature, and the natives in this area, they call it the Nantinaq. And I've heard a bunch of different translations for that. I've heard it translates to giant hairy thing, heard it translates to half man, half beast, my favorite, this is my favorite, is that it just doesn't translate well. There's not really a direct translation. That's my favorite, because I like to think that, like the creature itself, its very name is just as mysterious. I think that's just kind of cool. It's like that we don't know what it is. It's the Nantinaq. It's there's right. There's no way to explain it. But I have some sightings of the Nantinaq starting in the 20s, and it was seen by multiple witnesses around that time. And that's about the time when you start hearing, between the 20s and 30s, you start hearing about people going missing. Hunters would go up into the hills to hunt the sheep, and they wouldn't come back. And people would go, up to look for them. They'd find no trace of them. And it kind of, the stories kind of grow from there, where people were disappearing, people were dying. Again, not a lot of official documentation on this. I don't know if that's because of, there wasn't any mandatory record keeping. There wasn't really even any law enforcement in that area at the time. I've heard that before Alaska became a state, we had the Alaska Territory Police. But just because we had police doesn't mean they were in that area. I mean, they probably had maybe one or two guys, stationed in Soldovia or something like that, but they didn't have a permanent presence there. The people I talked to that had lived and grew up in there, some of them had never saw a police officer until they left. So, it was definitely a remote area. You couldn't even go to the doctor unless you had to get on a boat and go somewhere else.
Don't you think, Larry, that having a relative go missing would spook people more than anything?
Yeah, because there's that not knowing.
Yeah, there's no closure.
Yeah, there's no closure. You don't know what happened. They're just gone. And, sometimes, I'm sure there's plenty of things in Alaska that can make you go missing. There's bear, there's moose. Moose are just as dangerous as bear. A lot of people don't realize that.
Oh, yeah. No. Yeah, we have moose in northern Minnesota, so I can attest to that. They can be a very ornery animal.
Yeah, I've been charged by moose. I've never been charged by bear. I've almost every time I've ever had a bear confrontation, the bears run away. Not the case with the moose. There's been a couple of times where I got pretty scared because the moose was not backing down. And sometimes, the best thing you can do is just extract yourself from the situation. And a lot of times when you're out in the woods, that's not necessarily possible. But I think probably a lot of the incidents of missing people in Port Chatham, I think some of them surely were probably bear related, or just, you go up on the hill and you fall and you break your leg or you hit your head. And if nobody knows where you are, then, it can be really hard to find people, especially in the summertime when it's everything's green and there's foliage everywhere. I mean, you could be right next to somebody's body and not know it until, later in the season when everything starts to die. And that's certainly been the case. I found that in law enforcement, where one of my a friend of mine that lives in Anchorage on the police department there was telling me a story about a gentleman that went missing there in the woods, and they found his ATV, and they looked and looked, and they couldn't find him. They found the ATV, but they couldn't find him. And then a few months later in the fall, they found he had actually committed suicide. He was probably 40 yards away from the ATV, hanging in a tree, and they just couldn't find him, a few months before because it was so thick with foliage.
Yeah.
So, I mean, stories like that happen here all the time. I just read today they found a missing gentleman. I can't remember. I think it was somewhere in Southeast. He was 70 yards. They had found his vehicle. He'd been missing since February. They just found him, I guess, this last week, and he was like 70 yards away from his vehicle. So it happens here all the time.
Yeah, where you can almost be standing on top of them, and they don't find them because of that.
Do you know the stats, Larry, on how many people go missing in all of Alaska, by chance?
No, I don't have those in front of me, but it's a lot.
Yeah, I bet it is.
Yeah, I know. David Paulides has said before he's not even going to touch Alaska because it would, he could do a whole series of books just on Alaska.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I was doing the research for the show, and I came across a 1973 article in the Anchorage Daily News that talked about dismembered bodies, some of the missing people that were Dall sheep hunters that were surfacing in the lagoon nearby the town. And then the post office, of course, doing further reading, closed between 1950 and 51. But these people disappearing and then washing ashore, some of them were of highly suspect.
Me, but also you. The Pharaoh fast forwards his favorite foreign film, Powder Donut. Okay, what's my line?
The only line I see here on the script is get options based on your budget with the name your price tool from Progressive.
Oh man, that's a tongue twister, huh? I'm sorry, I'm gonna need a few more minutes. Bulbous Walrus, the Bulbous Walrus.
The Name Your Price tool, only from Progressive.
The owl ran afoul of the comatose coxswain.
Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
Streaming only on Peacock.
John Wayne Gacy killed 32.
Straight from the killer's mouth.
They want you to believe that I alone committed these murders.
The new gripping 6-part documentary series, John Wayne Gacy, Devil in Disguise. All episodes streaming now, only on Peacock.
Injuries to them when they did find them. Like, someone's head that's turned all the way around. That's not normal.
Right. And they describe them being mutilated in ways a bear wouldn't do.
Yeah.
And, generally bears will, when they eat or when they kill, they'll eat in a certain way. They like to start with the soft spots and work, they'll eat out the guts and stuff like that and work their way in. Which is, it's pretty gruesome, but I mean, that's just the way it works.
That's just the way it is.
Yeah. And bears will also, they'll catch their food, and save it for, they'll let it get a little ripe and then they'll start eating on it. Mm-hmm. A lot of times that's why you'll see bear guarding a kill. They're waiting for it to start decomposing a little bit so that it can get soft enough for them to get in there and really start eating on it.
Yeah.
And that, a lot of that stuff, you don't necessarily see with some of the missing people and the dead people in Port Chatham. You see, bodies that are mutilated, torn to shreds, and then there's Andrew Kamluck, who died in 1931, and they found him dead on his logging site, and it looked like he'd been hit on the head with a large piece of logging equipment, and the logging equipment was, several feet away from him, like somebody had tossed it aside, and it was too heavy for a person to lift, is what they say. So, I mean, when you get presented with stuff like that, it just makes you wonder, there's no witnesses, so it's hard, and it's all speculation at that point as to what happened. But I mean, what can pick up a large piece of equipment, hit somebody in the head, and then throw the piece of equipment away? So
yeah.
Exactly.
Well, Beans, and you're out there, and you're at the site, like you've been to this abandoned town. What's left of the town? Anything? Is there any structures left or anything like that?
There's 4 or 5. We would call them cabins, but back then they were houses. I'm sure they probably had full families living in them. But there's 4 or 5 little houses left. None of them have any windows or doors. They have dirt floors. They're just basically 4 walls and a roof. Some of them are probably good enough. You could get in them and keep the rain off of you. The roofs are still intact. I think it's actually pretty impressive that they, as many of them, survived the '64 earthquake as they did. Yeah. And then the cannery is completely gone, but some of the machinery is still there. It's pretty creepy when you're walking through this thick vegetation. You're basically just, I wish I'd had a machete with me. I don't know why I didn't take one, but you're just pushing leaves and foliage out of the way, and you come out on this clearing, and there's just these huge rusty machines just sitting there in the middle of nowhere. And it's a pretty surreal feeling when you come out there and you realize, like, man, just not that long ago, people were living their lives here and feeding their families, and it's nothing now. It's just all abandoned. And that's about all that's left. Is just the machinery and just a couple of the houses. I did find some evidence of some infrastructure while I was there. I saw some trees that had fallen over. The entire root systems had come up out of the ground. And tangled up in the root system, I actually saw some water pipes. So they actually had running water there in the town. And one of the gentlemen I talked to that had lived there, he said there was no electricity in the town. He did say that the cannery had a generator that they would run. So the cannery had power, but nobody else did. None of the houses, none of the families did.
Wow, so they actually had infrastructure. They actually put some money into this place. I mean, people were living there full time. So, I mean, I guess the question is, as a Bigfoot researcher, why? Why would Bigfoot come attack? What was the reason? I mean, they're normally, what we hear, a lot of reports, they're kind of a gentle giant. I mean, they don't generally seem to go out of their way to attack people.
Right, and there's a lot of theories as to why the Bigfoot in that area might have been so violent. I think the one that I lean towards, my favorite one, is probably it was the resources, the fish. I think that much like bears, they do take advantage of salmon runs. I think they take advantage of fish, and in fact, one of the sightings that occurred in Port Chatham was of an Nantinaq, or a Bigfoot, had gotten into somebody's fish trap, and it was crouched down eating fish. And I think that infers that, well, they probably did take advantage of the salmon runs of the fish. I mean, they knew enough to eat the fish. I don't know, maybe they learned it from the bears. Mm-hmm. But that goes to show you, okay, well, one of the main industries there was fishing. Back then, it wasn't as regulated as it is today. Here we have, they have seasons, they have limits, they have laws that govern, the fish, and they say it's for, to preserve the fish so that there'll be more fish, later on. We don't just fish them all out of existence. But back then, it wasn't quite as regulated as it is today, and they would just build these giant traps that the fish would swim into. Mm-hmm. And they wouldn't, they couldn't come out, and they would just, catch as many fish as you could. They weren't too as concerned about conservation as we are today.
Yeah.
And, that might have been a part of it. They were just taking too much, and the Bigfoot wasn't getting enough to take care of their troops or families or whatever kind of groups they live in, and they started to retaliate. And that I don't really have. I mean, that's my speculation. I don't have anything to back that up, but that's kind of how I feel about it. I think probably it was probably resources, and I've heard a few Bigfoot encounters, not necessarily here in Alaska, but just all over. Like you said, most of the time, the Bigfoot encounters, oh, there's a Bigfoot there, and the Bigfoot sees the person sees the Bigfoot, and the Bigfoot walks away. But a lot of the more aggressive encounters that you hear about are the ones where Bigfoot seems to be more in your face, I guess, for lack of a better term, is when maybe there's young present or more Bigfoots, a family group present, and they seem to be a little bit protective of that. So I think that probably, without a doubt in my mind, I think that for sure to get resources to feed their family, I think they probably would be violent.
I mean, that makes sense that, they're competing for the food. Certainly the natives talk about the Bigfoot stealing salmon out of their nets and, them having to leave, basically a salmon or two to keep them from destroying their nets.
Yes. I've heard those tales as well. And
yeah,
I've actually pondered going into an area with activity, much like that property I was at this weekend, and wondering if I could leave a fish somewhere where it would be picked up and maybe put a tracker or something in the fish and see where it would go. But it would be kind of hard. You'd have to almost guarantee that a bear wouldn't be able to get to it. You'd have to hang it up really high or something. And,
yeah.
But I think about that quite a bit, how it would probably, in my mind, have to be almost resources that would drive them to that. It would be a struggle for resources. They were taking too many fish, and the Nantinaq just started to retaliate.
Certainly.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Doug.
I was just going to say that certainly Bigfoot has been blamed for many missing people by many people. And the point is, you don't know, because if a Bigfoot's going to grab a person, there's not going to be anybody to come back and tell the tale. So yes, we think of them as gentle giants, but there sure is a lot of missing people that disappear in forested areas.
Right. And I think of them quite a bit like bears. I've had bear encounters where I see the bear sees me, and we go our separate ways. We don't, we're just passing the night, so to say. But then, certainly if there's a bear that has cubs, it's going to go a different way. And it makes me wonder how a lot of these, people that go missing in Bigfoot country, like maybe they had a different kind of encounter where they come upon one with young or something like that. I think for the most part, they're pretty passive, but I think probably much like us, when it comes to family and young, I think they can be pretty aggressive. Same with bears.
Yeah. Well, we'll look at the Boggy Creek story. And that was an uber aggressive Bigfoot. To hear them tell, if you read obviously it was mentioned in your bio. I mean, that was something that really had an impression on you. But then to go back and I think I watched it a couple weeks ago, the documentary again from the 70s. And that one was a different variety of Bigfoot, though, wasn't it? I mean, that was because they made it a point to talk about the 3 toes that it had in the tracks. Now, that's going to be my question for both you and Doug. What's up with the 3-toe versus the 5-toe Bigfoot? Is there an aggression factor with that breed? I guess, for lack of a better term.
There would be no 3-toed Bigfoot unless it's been inbreeding or, it just wouldn't be.
Yeah, and inbreeding would be more likely to cause extra toes, like it's called polydactysm, than less toes. I think there was only the one instance of the 3-toed tracks in the field, if I recall correctly. I'm not a big believer in those tracks. I think those were either hoaxed or a misidentification.
Okay.
But I do agree with you that there was some aggressive behavior in Boggy Creek, and I don't really know what would be the cause of that. I think maybe it was just a rogue male that was looking for his place, looking for his own territory or something. Maybe I don't know. I mean, all we can do is
all the wrong places.
Exactly. They didn't have Tinder yet, so he was he couldn't swipe right.
So
Yeah.
so my son purposely seeks out places where people have gone missing and then goes to see if he can get Bigfoot activity.
Well, I can't say that I don't necessarily I kind of do that myself. So I mean I can't.
It sounds bad. But the last place that he went to where two people have gone missing, they had activity both nights, and it was so bad and so aggressive, they had to leave early in the morning the last day. They were going to stay like 2 more days, and they left. Because one of the people in his party was actually getting post-traumatic stress syndrome from all of the rocks that were being thrown at them. So there could be some, obviously we don't know. It's all speculation, but I do find it interesting.
Hold on. Let me back up now with that statement now that you're done. Your son, God bless his heart, actually goes out, and you as well, Beans, seeks out places that people have already met a bad end.
Yeah.
Does anybody else maybe in the audience think that's a little strange? I'm just saying, tempting fate a little bit.
There's not too many places you can go in Alaska where somebody hasn't gone missing.
Well, this is true. I understand that. But, if you're there by happenstance, that's a completely different story than looking for it. Like, hey, I'm going to go where this guy was dismembered. Or missing.
Like, okay, so what he'll do is go to the exact spot, like where they found the guy's wallet. That's all they found. He'll actually seek out exact spots. But he's trying to see whether there's activity in those areas, which there has been. So I do find it interesting. So
that's extremely interesting. I'll vicariously live through him because I'm not going to put myself through that.
Yeah, well, I'll send you with him next time.
I'll tell you guys a quick aside. It was 2 years ago. I was going into my area, and I was kind of debating on a couple of places to go. It's a big area, and I was like, man, I could go here, I could go there, and I ended up going, we'll just say to the west side of it, and didn't have a very eventful outing. It's early in the season, and went about my day, went home, and a couple of days later, there was a gentleman that was camping on the east side of that area, and the day I was there, he went missing.
Jeez.
And he still hasn't been found.
Do you guys believe that these people are going missing? I mean, obviously you can't see for sure, but it seems like there's Bigfoot activity where people are going missing. And that's the correlation, Doug, and you were talking about. Well, okay, so maybe Bigfoot isn't as happy-go-lucky as we think he is or she is. Well, maybe there is some guarding their territory and lashing out.
Okay, well, I'm sure, Larry, you've heard about this too, where, people have very bizarre activity around their cabin. And I've always been a little bit paranoid that they're trying to get you outside.
Yes.
And if you go walking out into the dark outside your cabin because something's throwing things against it, I'm not doing it. I'm just going to stay, within those 4 walls.
Yeah. Right. It makes you wonder why do they, do they just want you outside just so they can see you, to keep an eye on you? Is it something more sinister?
They're trying to lure you out to kill you. That's not why.
The thing is, you don't know, and you're certainly scared enough to not do it. Mm-hmm. You just, your better self just goes, nope. As tempting as it is to dash out the door to maybe get a glimpse of whatever's doing it, you're just like, nope. You think about it again, nope. Staying put right here. So,
well, didn't something similar happen to you, Doug, at a cabin where it was messing around? Yeah, I mean,
numerous.
was it in was it Snell Grove? Isn't it called
Yeah,
Snell Grove?
in
Yeah.
Ontario, it's in the BWCA border. Yeah, and it's happened to my son numerous times, and you're just like, nah, not going out. In fact, a place Larry was this weekend, it's kind of a similar situation, isn't it, Larry?
Yes, and in fact, I actually went out by myself a couple of times there, but it's important to note, like, there wasn't a whole lot of activity going on. If I had been sitting around the campfire hearing knocks and screams at night, I probably would not have walked up in those woods by myself like I did.
Right.
But I did. I went up there by myself and walked around. I didn't get super far away, but I felt confident enough that I could go up there unmolested. But again, like I said, if there had been a lot of activity going on, I probably wouldn't have done that, not by myself. I had an incident happen to me in Washington where I was standing on a logging road, and I had my back to the tree line and was looking across the road, and I heard like what sounded like whispering behind me, just a few, like, and that really scared me. Like, I've been concerned in the woods before, like, oh, maybe I should leave. I don't, I think there's a bear in the area, but that was the first time I ever really got scared. And it lasted for several hours. It was almost like an unnatural fear. And I just have such a hard time wrapping my head around it. And I've been a police officer for 15 years. I've had guns pulled on me. I've had knives pulled on me. I've been in fights. And I'm not saying that to brag. I'm just giving you a reference here.
Sure.
And I was scared out of my mind after that, and for hours. And we went back to the campsite, and I was sitting around the campfire that night with my gun out, just waiting for something to happen. I thought something was going to come and get me. And about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, we hear this big, huge power knock, this boom. And Will Ulmer, the guy that was sitting across the fire from me, he looks at me and he says, "Is it just me, or did the atmosphere change?" And I said, "No, you're absolutely right. Like, I don't feel scared anymore. Like, it was just like somebody flipped a switch, and I wasn't scared after that big knock."
Yeah, a lot of times that's what I call the finale. They make a huge noise and they leave the area.
Yeah, and I went to bed after that and got a couple hours of sleep, and I felt fine. But that was probably one of the most bizarre, unexplainable things that I've had happen to me out in the woods. Is just that unnatural fear, which is like a switch was flipped. And
So
you hear a lot of. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what's your best estimation for the finale? Like the switch being flipped? Is that because they realize you're not a threat, or they lose interest? Why do you think the sudden change?
I don't know. I don't know if they were.
I can explain it best. Just go to any zoo that's got gorillas. They'll slam the window really hard and they'll leave it, walk away, and they'll go sit in the corner. They're done. They're just done. It's just their way of saying, "I'm done with you." Yeah. And so they do a big goodbye, a big pound to show you how powerful they are, and then they leave. It's kind of the same, and it's been very, very, very consistent for me.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you there, because if you listen to some of the stuff that the NAWAC guys go through, they'll have a lot of, it sounds like it's like a power display. The limbs, the trees being pushed over, stuff like that. And I guess, when you're in the woods are quiet. And I guess loud noise is probably like you say, like it's a power play. It's like, look how much noise I can make. Look how big and bad I am.
Yeah, and that's just similar to black bears too, because they'll do a big bluff charge and a big, they'll blow and slap the ground. That's when you're safe.
Gotcha. So the bigger the display, the less danger.
Probably the less danger. Where the worry comes in if there isn't any.
Yeah, I think that's what's behind a lot of the missing people. I think they don't get the displays of aggression.
Right.
They don't get the warning. They don't get I better get the hell out of here.
Yep.
I don't think they receive any of that at all.
Yeah.
It's straight to attack. Instead of doing that, it's yeah.
Oh, it's like it's like a tiger stalking its prey. It's not going to make any noise. So you wonder. I mean, I just think I've always thought that Bigfoots operate on fear, like a black bear. And that's how they've survived, just operating on fear. But that doesn't mean that they don't get hungry and don't suddenly think, wouldn't it be fun just today to grab one of these humans and pluck his beard off?
Right. Well, I want to ask Doug a question, because I've been thinking about this recently. It's really been in my mind here recently. I'm almost certain these things exist. Like, I'm in the 90%. I'd be more surprised to find out they don't exist than they do.
Yep.
But if they do exist, then they have to be stronger than us, faster than us, and I guess arguably more intelligent than us to remain hidden so long. Why aren't they in charge? Why aren't they the dominant species on the planet?
Well, they're obviously very humble. Don't like tools. They're just very, never reported with tools of any type. For all we know, I mean, I think I did a podcast once where I told people, if we evolve long enough, is it possible that we're going to go back to nature? Do you know what I mean? At some point, you're going to go, yeah, maybe it's not so great to have plastic bottles, to live in concrete houses, to blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, to devolve.
So it's possible. Yeah, right. It's possible that this is an ancient civilization with an ancient culture, and they've just chosen to live in harmony.
Yeah, I never thought of that way. Yeah.
For all we know, they had high tech. We don't. I always say stuff like this. It sounds just as goofy as ever, but do we really know anything? No, we don't. But yeah, I mean, if you're going to survive, if we're all going to survive on this planet, literally, eventually, you can't just keep throwing plastic bottles in the ocean, You're going to have to, at some point, get high-tech enough where you can go low-tech enough.
Right. Well,
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, that was
that
in my
does make sense.
Yeah, that was in my mind, because one of the things that is kind of coming up now in the Bigfoot world is, the theory of parallel evolution, and how we kind of evolved together with these things, and they went one way and we went the other. But it almost goes against survival of the fittest if you think about it, because obviously they could rip our heads off and take our houses if they wanted to, but
Sure.
they choose not to do that.
Right.
So Doug, I think that's as good a theory as any.
They have great restraint. Why is it they don't break windows? They'll touch windows gently. They won't break them. Why is it people very rarely ever get hit with a rock? I mean, I've never heard of anybody being hit by a rock. I have heard stories where people have been pushed down, shoved while they're deer hunting, or walking or hiking. I've heard of numerous stories of people being shoved to the ground. But generally, there's a lot of restraint. Where they'll come around a cabin, they'll beat on it, but they'll pick a spot that's unbreakable, as if they know glass is breakable. It's really weird. I mean, it's kind of a mind, a mind jag. It really is.
I think they have rules of engagement.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
I think I absolutely think they do.
We as human beings, we're extremely efficient killers.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter how many of them there are. Once we find out who they are, what they are, we got the big boomsticks. And we can make them go bye-bye very quickly. So they could also be mindful of the danger that maybe respect us.
Sure.
The kind of power we can wield.
Yeah.
Because, we're so good at killing, Doug, and beings, that we have to have seasons to restrain ourselves from doing so.
Well, when I throw out crazy theories like that, all I'm doing is saying, hey, I wouldn't be surprised, if that's what has really happened. That we're talking about an ancient civilization that just decided, hey, we're going to live in nature. We're going to live in harmony. And think about what creature that's a humanoid lives in harmony like that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's insane. No tools. Survives in the wintertime. Leaves no trace hardly of its existence. Really lives a very gentle path. So, I have a ton of respect for whatever these things are. It's respect all the way.
Right. And that's why I think that they had to be threatened some way in Port Chatham to retaliate in the way they did, either through development or resources. Food, their food was being taken, their land was being taken. Something was going on. There was some logging going on there.
Yep.
So I mean, it could have been either one of those factors or all those factors.
Well, just the intimidation. If let's say that they were just throwing rocks constantly, that alone will definitely intimidate people. But it's also a very non-confrontational way to do it, and a very safe way for them to confront people without confronting them.
Did the activity go down after the armed guards showed up?
Unfortunately, it doesn't really say. The story just says that they refused to work until armed guards, secured the town, and that's basically all the information that's given in the story. And then, you have a few sightings through the years, through like the 20s. Not really a lot of violent behavior reported. And then in 31 is when you have Andrew Kamluck's death. And then you also in 31 have a prospector that goes missing. And that was blamed on the Nantinaq too. And then it seems to ramp up again after 31. It seems to start ramping up again. And then around World War II, I think, is when the sheep hunter, when the hunters started going missing. Yeah. Was in kind of the World War II time frame. And then by 1950, basically, that's when the town is abandoned. Yeah. So it seemed to kind of ebb and flow a little bit almost.
Was it a slow abandonment, did you hear, or was it just all at once, everyone get the hell out of here?
I don't know. I know the postmaster was the last person to leave, so that kind of makes me think that it was a gradual abandonment where they sent groups of people moving out, and then the postmaster was the last one. Sure. I do know that if you check the census records, in 1980s census, I guess they actually sent some poor sap out there to walk around and do a census, and there was nobody living there. So how would you like that job?
No, I'm good. No, I'm good. I'm good. I'll stay away from the cursed town that everyone runs away from.
So when you were there, Larry, did you sense anything at all? Was it just like any other ghost town? A little bit creepy, but you didn't sense anything?
The first time I was there, I felt like I was in Disneyland. I mean, I was just having a blast. I was walking around, exploring, looking at stuff. And even when, a couple of the members of the crew I was with had some activity and some sightings, I never really got scared or uneasy. I actually was having a blast. We got some thermal footage of something. It was a few hundred yards away, and curse of Bigfoot. I look at my thermal, and I see something that looks like Donkey Kong raising its arms up and down like this, and I'm just, we're there looking for Bigfoot. What do?
Are you a gig worker or self-employed? Womply has helped over 100,000 small businesses get a PPP stimulus loan and proudly serves more than 600,000 small businesses across America. Millions of self-employed workers may qualify for up to $41,000 in 100% forgivable loans. So apply today. The program ends soon, and funds are limited. Apply now at womply.com/apply and see if you qualify for a PPP loan. Womply.com/apply. That's WOMPLY.com/apply.
I hand my thermal over to somebody else. I'm like, hey, what do you see over there? And he looks, and he goes, it looks like a dude.
Yeah.
And he hands it back to me. And at this point, I start thinking, like, just maybe I should hit record on the thermal. And of course I do. But by this time, it's moved back. It's starting to move away from us. And of course, we went to the area where we saw it, and we couldn't find anything. But even with that, I didn't feel threatened or scared. I was more curious than anything.
Yeah.
The second time when we went back, it was in May. The first time we were there, it was in September. The second time we were there was in May. And the second time we were there, I had a little bit more ominous vibe from the place. And I say that there was a lot of things going on, like with the weather. As soon as we pulled in, a storm started. And the storm went, we were there for like 3 or 4 days. And as long as we were there, the storm was raging. And we would stay on the boat, and then we would gear up and go on a Zodiac off the shore. And without fail, every time the weather would start to clear up or to get better, as soon as we would start getting on that boat, it would get worse. And we actually started it started out as a joke where we were like, man, it's something really don't want us here. And by the time of the end of the trip, I actually believed it. I don't get a whole lot into the supernatural paranormal stuff. It's not that I don't necessarily believe in it. It's just I don't know what to do with it. I'm a police officer. I work with facts. I want to be able to look at something, or I need something, meat and potatoes before I can jump to conclusions.
Going the ghosts and strangeness
And there was definitely some weird stuff going on that second trip. We were in one of the little cabins doing some filming. We were filming for the Travel Channel, and I saw, I don't know, it looked like, have you guys heard the sightings of the predator type creature, the Glimmer Man, Yeah. And I saw something kind of drop down out of a tree, and it was raining pretty much the whole time we were there. So I just thought, there's some, like, a ball of water. I was like, I couldn't figure out where that ball of water had been stuck in that spruce tree. And it just kind of dropped down, and I didn't think any much more about it. It wasn't very big. It was probably about the size of a softball. And I didn't see anything else or hear anything else. Well, I went over to where the cameras were filming because it was my turn to sit down and do a segment. And Stephen Major, who was with us, he took my spot back where I was, back by that back window. And he started to hear something growl and move some branches in the woods. And I don't know if those two, what I saw and what he heard and saw, was connected or not, but it was almost the same area.
Good story. So what show were you filming for?
That was the Alaska Triangle.
Oh,
yeah, that's right.
Was that with who's in that show?
That was me. That episode, that segment, it was me, Stephen Major, and Adam Davies.
Oh, with Adam. Okay.
Yeah.
Adam's awesome.
Yeah. That's kind of how I got to Port Chatham, was through Adam. I met Adam at the International Bigfoot Conference. And then I heard he was coming up to Alaska, and I sent him, I got to Port Chatham because Adam Davies wanted a free drink. And I heard Adam was coming to Alaska, and I was like, hey, if you end up here, give me a call and I'll buy you a drink. And sure enough, he was coming with Steven to scout for Port Chatham for the documentary, and they gave me a call, and we met up at the bar one night, and I was telling them some of the history of Bigfoot in the area and some of the stories that I knew. And it turned out when Steven got ready to go back to film the documentary, Adam couldn't make it because of work commitments, so he asked me to go. So I ended up going out there for the first time because of that meeting with Adam and Steven over beers, So it's kind of weird how life kind of takes you in that direction. I never had any intent, to go there, or I wanted to, but I wasn't like trying to get there, and it just kind of happened anyway, twice now.
So have you heard about any sightings along the Alaskan highway?
I haven't had any personally reported to me, but I've certainly heard of a few. I know, was it in 2003 when I drove through there, I stopped at a little gas station, so I don't even know where I was, somewhere in Canada. And I remember walking up to the car to get ready to leave, and one of the guys that was working there was like, be careful, there's a lot of animals out there. And I said, yeah, I think I've seen most of them. And he's like, oh, I bet you haven't seen all of them yet. And I kind of got he didn't, Bigfoot wasn't said, but I really got the impression that that's what he was referring to.
Exactly. Interesting. Yeah, I still have yet to make that trip. It's still on my bucket list.
Yeah, I've driven it twice, and you see wildlife every time you're there. And one of the coolest wildlife stories I have from that trip was I was driving down the road. I mean, it's just deserted. Just nobody, no other cars on the road. Just cruising down the road, just forests on both sides of me. And I saw something big and black on the side of the road. Of course, I start slowing down, and I want to see what it is. And I roll down my window, and I get up even with it, and I look, and it's this huge black wolf. And he turns around and looks at me, or she, I don't know what it was. And we sat there and we stared at each other for, I don't know, 15 or 20 seconds. And it was just this like really cool moment that we shared. And I thought, man, I got to get a picture of this. And as soon as I reached down to get my camera, it turns around and takes off. And I got a shot of the backside of it running off.
Yeah.
But that was my favorite sighting on the Alaska Highway.
Yeah,
You guys
it's worth
have
it.
cougars? Oh, sorry, Doug.
No, that's worth it. If you can have one experience like that on that long trip, that's worth it.
Well, there are reports of mountain lions in Alaska, but much like the deer on my friend's property and some other animals, like there's reports of deer in the Kenai National Wildlife Refuge where I go. They're not supposed to be here, but still people say they see them. I've never seen one. I've seen a lot of lynx. I've seen. Man, it's funny because I know people who live here their almost their entire lives and have never seen a lynx. So it's like that. You gotta have the animal and the person at the right place at the right time. You know?
Because cougar will make people disappear.
Yeah.
You know, in fact, when I used to hunt out west in Idaho, that was one of the big fears, to have a lot of cougar out there. And they'd warn you, hey, if they drop down on you, it's not good. And they're strong, and they'll take a full-grown man and they'll stash him up in a tree.
When I was in Washington, we were walking around and I found cougar tracks, and I kind of felt out of my element because I've not been in a state where cougars were a threat, and I got a little uneasy with that because it wasn't something that I really knew how to deal with or what to look for. And that was definitely a moment of where, like, man, I should have done some more research on the natural wildlife in the area before coming out here.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if that area where all the people were running from, whether cougar could have been one of the instigators, because there's been issues.
There's not supposed to be any there, and I haven't heard any reports from the area. Yeah.
Have you heard of sightings, Larry, a little bit north of the tree line? Where it's just tundra.
I have. A lot of pilots that are up there say they'll see them in that area. Kind of like. Are you talking about right as you're going up and the end of the tree line as it goes up into the mountainous area? Yeah, I've heard a few of those.
Either the mountains or the tundra. You get into the plains.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of sightings from areas like that.
You would think caribou would be certainly be a prey animal.
Yes, I think moose and caribou are definitely on the menu. I don't think there's any reason why they wouldn't be. Yeah. I think there's enough evidence in the lower 48 to say that they frequently dine on deer. So I don't know why moose and caribou would be any different.
Well, think of the migration time where they're calving.
Yeah.
Where they don't have the protection of the herd because they get left behind to have their calf. They have to catch up with the herd. That would be, to me, an ideal situation for a Bigfoot to, take advantage of hunting caribou.
Yes, I believe they probably do. I think they're very opportunistic.
Get a little bit of veal and a little bit of caribou. All one shot. Yeah. But, I know.
So what is it? What did it take for you to write this book? I mean, was this Was this project over years? Did it happen really quick? And, do you have any regrets after you wrote it?
It kind of come about. I started out, I was just going to write about Bigfoot on the Kenai Peninsula. And I was just going to have a chapter on Port Chatham in there. And as I got to writing it, I thought, man, I could do a whole book just on Port Chatham. And I got to thinking about it. And, if you Google Port Chatham, if you go to look it up, there's only so many stories out there about Port Chatham. There's only so much information out there. Once you get to page 2 or 3 of the Google results, you've just about seen it all. So I thought it was a unique opportunity for me to put some information out there that wasn't readily available. There's stories in the book that you're not going to find on the internet, at least not right now. And it's just the only nonfiction book on the area that's available right now. So once I kind of realized that, once I realized that this was going to be the only nonfiction book on Port Chatham in the world at the moment, that really man, this is my opportunity to do something that's a first. I can say I was the first person to do this, which there's not a lot of firsts left out there. And that kind of spurred me to start writing it. And it's a short book. It's under 200 pages. But I feel like, now that it's out there, it's doing well. People are reading it, especially people in the area. I've sold it to several local bookshops, and they're all selling out. And people are starting to reach out to me with their stories of their family members and their, especially a lot of the native families of Port Chatham. And I feel like possibly I could write a sequel to it. More history and horror in Port Chatham. I don't know, but probably I can't say that I have any regrets right now. I do wish I could have put more in it, but again, what I did put in it was about all I could get my hands on at the time. But now that it's out there and people are finding it, I'm getting more information.
Interesting. Well, I was just thinking to myself, what physical evidence is there? I mean, you guys see any tracks, anything that would, Bigfoot related? I mean, anything really tangible?
We did find some tracks. I found a really nice 14-inch impression in the moss. Unfortunately, because of the way the ground is there, it's really hard to find a good place where you could cast. Most of the ground, it's really that spongy moss. Yeah. So it's really hard. Yeah, I mean, if you poured plaster in it, would just soak down through the moss probably onto the ground. But we did find a couple of tracks. There's some pictures in the book of one of the most impressive tracks that we found. And, we didn't find a lot of physical evidence other than just the impressions and the tracks. But one of the things that kind of struck me is we're walking along, and this is over by where the town site is, and there's just these blueberry bushes just everywhere, and they're all stripped clean. No berries whatsoever, and there's bear sign all over the place. Bear poop, and the poop is full of berries. And we were exploring around, we're walking around, and the best I can describe it is it's like we walked through an invisible barrier, and we walked into this area where there's just tons and tons of blueberry bushes full of berries. I mean, full. And, we're walking around, we're pulling berries off, and we're eating them. And there was absolutely no bear sign there whatsoever. And that really struck a chord with me. I think that bear and Bigfoot probably have a good mutual respect for each other. I don't think they like to intermingle. And I just felt like when we walked into those full berry bushes that we were walking into somebody else's territory.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. So it's kind of like just dead stop. There's like a barrier, invisible barrier, and that was it. The bears would not feed on those berries.
There's a sighting report in Raincoast Sasquatch by Dr. Robert Alley, which is probably the last Bigfoot Bible, and it's always struck with me. It's always stuck with me. I've always kept this in the back of my mind. Where these guys are on a boat and they're looking at the shoreline and they see a bear pop out on on the shore, and he's walking along, and he stops, and he lifts his head, and he sniffs the air.
Want to learn something new but aren't sure where to begin? There's a dummies book for that. Whether you're looking to pick up some new coding skills or want to try your hand at gardening this spring, dummies books span all kinds of interests, hobbies, and technologies. From puppies to project management to the paleo diet, these books help you learn just about anything the easy way. For a list of popular books, go to dummies.com/stuff. That's dummies.com/stuff.
And he turns around and he goes back to the way he was coming. And then off on stage left, they see a Bigfoot come out on the shore. The Bigfoot stops, lifts his head, sniffs the air, turns around, goes back stage left the way he was coming.
Wow.
And that's always stuck in my head that, it's just one encounter. It's just one kind of like an anecdotal thing. I've always thought that was probably a good indication that they just do not, Bear and Bigfoot they don't hang out a lot. They don't
dig each other. They're not buddies.
Yeah, they don't share a lot of territory probably either. And then when we were in Port Chatham, and I experienced that with the berry bushes, walking through completely cleaned out berries, and just, couldn't go 2 steps without stepping in bear poop. And then, kind of the same area, just walking along, and then it's just like you pass through this wall, and it's just berries as far as the eye can see, and no bear poop, no bear sign.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
Animals have borders. Wolves do it. It's how they all survive, is by establishing these extremely, very defined borders. And you may have stumbled on one.
And where we found all those berry bushes that still had the berries on them, that's where Mary Beth said she actually saw something peek behind a tree at her. And so, that might have been the place. And that's also near where we believe the lagoon was, as you were mentioning earlier, Joel, about the bodies that washed in on the lagoon.
Yeah.
That's behind the town site there, and it's this little lagoon. And we were thinking, looking at the map, that's probably the only place that story could be referring to, where the bodies washed ashore, was in that lagoon. So I think it's a pretty good chance that's probably, at least at that time, and I believe it probably still is based on what we saw there, that's where the Nantinaq likes to spend some of his time.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
You think of all the states in the Union where a Bigfoot to get shot, you would think that'd be Alaska.
There's a few accounts of that happening.
Yeah, Alaskans are armed to the teeth. When they go out in the woods, because they're dealing with big predators. They're dealing with brown bear. They're dealing with moose. So they're not carrying 22 long rifles. They're actually carrying something that with some firepower. And so, have you heard about people downing Bigfoot?
There's one from southeast where a group of natives were out hunting, and they shot one, and it's unclear whether they knew what it was when they shot it. I tend to think they probably thought it was a bear, but they shot it, they realized what it was, and they were afraid they were going to get in trouble, not from the law, but because of their beliefs and their culture. They decided it was probably not a good thing to be shooting Bigfoot, and so they supposedly buried it somewhere. And there's another one, actually not too far from me, across Kachemak Bay here, near Lake Iliamna, of a gentleman that was driving his truck down the road, and he saw a Bigfoot run across the road in front of him. And this is like the most Alaskan thing ever. What does he do? He slams on his brake, and he gets out of his truck with his gun, and he starts shooting at it as it runs off. And I don't know it. I don't believe he hit it. But one of the odd things about that encounter is he reported it had a pot belly. So I don't know, maybe if it was a pregnant female, or if it was just, a fat Bigfoot. But you don't hear too many. Yeah, you don't hear too many encounters where they're described as, having a belly on them.
Yeah, the only film or only video of a pot-bellied Bigfoot that could be a female that's pregnant is the Paul Freeman footage.
Yeah, but there's a couple other reports of Bigfoot being shot in Alaska, and all of them pretty much end with, well, we didn't know what it was, so we left it alone. We left it there, or we were afraid we were going to get in trouble. Yeah.
We almost need a body, really. Yeah, I mean,
I think
in
we
some
absolutely do.
respects, you know,
I think we
to
absolutely do. I
understand
don't
its
think it's going to
anatomy,
be.
to yeah,
There's no way
that
it's going to be proven otherwise.
yeah, I was gonna say and that, and to prove they exist, so we can better manage their habitat, so that we know what we're dealing with.
Yeah. I mean,
Protect them as a species.
even DNA is not going to do it. You know, my friend Adam Davies, he was in Sumatra looking for the orang pindac, and he got samples of DNA that were from an unknown primate, and they were like, "Huh, these are from an unknown primate. That's interesting." And
And that was about it. Yeah.
that was it. You know, it didn't go anywhere other than that. So it's going to take a body. You're going to have to throw one up on a slab somewhere for somebody to really take it seriously and to generate money for research. And I think that's what it really comes. That's what everything comes down to is money. If somebody was to put enough money into it, I think it could probably be proven, but it might take years and years.
Yeah,
Doug,
no, I agree.
Do you think we? Oh, sorry about that. Doug.
No, I just
was gonna
agree
ask.
that there's zero money for study, and the scientists, they're not gonna apply, for money because that'd be the last time they'd ever get a job.
Yeah, yeah, that's true, and I agree. I mean, we almost need that body. We almost need something. I mean, I think it might have been you, Doug. We were talking it. You'd have to get two bodies, really, to really, because just to rule out any kind of abnormalities in the DNA or anything. Two bodies, two good specimens.
I think
That makes a lot of sense.
one body would raise the bar tremendously, but it's still, people would go, oh, the skeptics would go, it's deformed, it's a hybrid, it's it's just a human with a disease. Human with recidivism of some sort, DNA, genetic, mutation.
Yeah.
Or, oops, that's the last one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how many do you think there are? How many do you think there are, Larry?
I think there's probably more than most people think, but at the same time, I think they're very rare. I would say there's definitely in the tens of thousands, but they're not, they don't live in high concentrations, probably, small groups of 10 to 20 or so. And I think probably they move around. They're pretty nomadic, following resources and, mates or whatever, they need.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That makes sense. That would also explain why people aren't seeing them. I mean, because they are so elusive and they're in small pods. And if you take a look at the map at night, you can see right where our population centers are. There's huge, just areas that man has even barely touched yet. And Alaska, of course, is that vital frontier that I don't know how much of Alaska is yet to be discovered. Quite a bit of it, if I'm understanding correctly. There's a lot of Alaska that can't even get to.
Right. I mean, Alaska is so unique, and it's one of the few places where you can actually get to a place where there's a good possibility no human being has stepped before.
Yeah.
I have no proof of it, but I'm pretty sure there's been a few places that I've got to go and walk around where there hasn't been anybody else there. And that's a pretty cool feeling when you think, man, this might be the first time a human has ever been here, or at least been here in the last, 50, 60 years.
Yeah. That'd be a great experience to get up there and get in those remote areas and just see what's there, and really do some real, hardcore research and see, because at that point some of them would never have seen a human Bigfoot. You know what I mean? If no one's been there that long, so they wouldn't have. You wouldn't think that they'd have any real fear of you.
Right, and that's one of the things with my friend's property that we were talking about earlier, is we kind of think maybe if they live in that area, maybe they're a little bit uneducated, and they may be able to be fooled by something like a trail camera or something that they've never seen before. So we have some high hopes for that area.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just amazing to me how Bigfoot has been able to elude photography, all but a couple cases, like the Gimlin film, past the Gimlin film, and of course the one that Doug had just mentioned. But by and large, they really do seem to have the knack to elude photography.
Yeah, and I have a unique perspective on that, being a police officer and having a lot of the training that I've had. And when you talk about being in a stressful situation, one of the first things they teach us as police officers, when you're in a stressful situation, one of the first things that happens is you lose your fine motor skills. And like when you have to manipulate your holster and your gun and all that, and that's why we train and train and train and train. Drawing our weapon and firing and aiming
Muscle
and
memory.
right. And that's one of the reasons why we train so much with our firearms, is because when you're stressed, you lose your fine motor skills, and everything that we need to capture a Bigfoot, either on video or to shoot one or whatever, almost every little gadget that we need requires some form of fine motor skill. And I can see easily how, like my story earlier with the thermal footage, I saw something, and what did I do? I handed the thermal off to somebody else to see what he saw. I didn't hit record. I was like, what the hell is that? And just the other day at that remote property I was at, I'm sitting in the woods, just being quiet and relaxing, and an eagle starts flying over the treetops above me. And I had my camera out, I had my camera on, and I thought, I'm going to try and get a picture of this eagle coming through flying over me. And I couldn't do it. I missed it. And I knew it was coming. I saw it was coming. I had my camera on, couldn't do it. So it's
you're right.
It's frustrating, but I do understand why it hasn't happened yet. Why we haven't got really good photographic evidence.
That makes a lot of sense in that situation. The last thing you think about is taking that picture. You're in awe of what you're experiencing at that moment.
Right. And having the right equipment for the job. I've got a dash camera in my truck, and I was out driving around one day, and I had a lynx and a bear run out in front of me. It's the same day, different times, but the same day. And I hadn't had the dash camera very long. I was so excited. I was like, oh, I got a lynx and a bear. I get home, I pop in the card, and I had noted the time when both events happened. I get home, I put the card in, I watched the video, couldn't see either one of them. It's a wide angle lens, they were too far away. And it's just, it happens. It's not just with Bigfoot, it happens with everything.
Yeah. One of the big arguments against, like, we all have cell phones. We're all carrying things, but those cell phones are so wide angle that anything that's 40 feet away, you're just not going to get.
Right.
Very, very true. Well, you only got about a minute left, so Larry, why don't you go ahead and tell everyone where they can get your book and how they can contact you and your website and stuff like that.
All right. Well, the book, it's available on Amazon.com. You can buy the Kindle buy it in Kindle format, or you can buy it in paperback. If you want an autographed copy from me, you can buy it on my website at alasquatchpodcast.com. That's Alasquatch, ALASQUATCH, podcast.com. You can go on there. I've got a little store. I've got my book available on there and a couple other little knickknacks like some shot glasses and some patches and stuff. And I'll get an autographed copy out to you. But I do have limited copies, but I've got more on the way. So if they're out of stock, just wait a few days. I should have some here in the next couple of days.
So do you have a podcast?
I do. A Alasquatch podcast. Yeah.
And
check that out too.
What do you talk about?
It's all things cryptid in Alaska. Mostly it's about Bigfoot, but we've got a lot of other stuff going on. We've got lake monsters, everything else. I do plan on having a couple of lake monster shows on here pretty soon.
Oh, very cool. Very cool.
Man, that is really cool. Well, everyone, it has been Larry Beans Baxter. It's been our pleasure to talk with you, Beans, and man, it's keep us posted as well. And Doug, you and I, we're gonna get out of here. It's the end of another show. So until next time, guys, take care of each other, love each other, and make sure you keep looking for Bigfoot.
your apartment. I need some favors from you. Your cat keeps rubbing against the kitchen island, and I can't return the favor. Can you give her extra pets for me? After that, could you bundle your renters and car insurance with Geico? We could save money, and it's easy to do online. And one last thing. Could you leave the TV on during the day? I need to catch up on my soaps.
Geico. For bundling made easy, go to geico.com today.
Are you a gig worker or self-employed? Womply has helped over 100,000 small businesses get a PPP loan. You may qualify for up to $41,000 and 100% forgivable loans. The program ends soon and funds are limited. Apply now at womply.com/apply. That's WOMPLY.com/apply.